Hi, this is Mrs. Kongzerus, and are you ready to throw down on Arcade1Up's Big Blue? Well, let's go! Arcade1Up made their Big Blue extra long by adding these side panel extensions. They fit nice and tight with these metal brackets to give it that extra girth. The overall cab design pays homage to a real Big Blue, but she's still a little skinny next to the other Arcade1Ups. I love Big Blue's color scheme and simple artwork as it totally matches my outfit. The large Street Fighter II Champion Edition lit marquee stands out in a crowd, just like me. This Big Blue bundle also comes with a stool featuring subtle Street Fighter II artwork that matches the front panel, and I love it when the carpet matches the drapes. Overall, the cab stands 5 foot 7 inches tall and looks fantastic along with other 3/4 scale home arcades. The screen size is your average 17-inch BOE monitor that looks somewhat extra vibrant. However, the model number is exactly the same as the Marvel vs. Capcom cab. However, the PCB is something brand new that we've never seen before in this next generation of Arcade1Up cabs. Taking a closer look at the PCB, we now have a new micro SD card slot, a USB-A slot, an Ethernet port, and a new audio cable that connects to the control deck for headphone use. The cable almost resembles an S-video cable and connects to the encoder board, which clearly has markings indicating the headphone jack can be used as potential mic for future head-to-head live chatting possibilities.
Testing out the headphones on the Street Fighter Big Blue, and there's nobody in the lobbies. And there's Mrs. Kongzerus.
It is bedtime.
It is Big Blue playing time. That's what it is. What the hell?
Thanks Mrs. Kongzerus. Anyways, let's go over the control panel, and the first thing you'll notice is the slant angle of the Big Blue control panel compared to the standard Arcade1Up Marvel vs. Capcom that you see there, and it sits lower than your standard Arcade1Up. Another cool feature is the light up deck protector, which lights up, changes colors, looks pretty cool, but I've had this same deck protector on my Marvel vs. Capcom. I've played over 5,000 matches and I can see every single scratch and mark on my deck protector now, and it kind of looks crappy, but it looks cool at first, just don't play it a lot. And here's the headphone jack that I mentioned earlier, which you can plug in any headphone. It is a little bit awkwardly placed as the cable can get in the way, but just tuck it to the side and it should be out of your way when you're playing. Now let's go over the control deck and look at the buttons and the joystick options that you have. On the right hand side, these are the stock buttons, and you can see they're known for being really mushy here. They're playable, they're not the best. I've installed sand walls on the left because that's what I prefer, but let's go over some options that you can reinstall some different buttons into your cabinet. So here's the stock Arcade1Up buttons. You can see how mushy it is. When you press it down, there's not a sound when you click the micro switch, but you have to press down really far for it to actually register a press. The two most common buttons you'll see people want to replace them with are either sandwall buttons, which look like this. So this is a much shorter press to actually register that micro switch, and it's really silent. Or you have your HAP or IL Industrious Lorenzo switches, which uses a micro switch down here. So when you press it, it's going to make that clicky micro switch sound. And so this is a different preference here. It's a little bit softer around the edges, and it's much more tactile than the stock ones that you see here. Here's some other options. Here's an actual Industrious Lorenzo button here. You can tell by the IL, so it's a different type of high quality plastic that's used here. This is a generic brand HAP competition one that's sold by DIY Retro. It looks almost exactly the same, except this is the brand version of it, and this is a non-brand version of the control or the actual button itself. So they work bothly pretty much very similar. The quality of the plastic on the actual IL just feels a little bit better than the fake one. Next, there's these all-in-one included buttons that have a clicking micro switch, but the micro switch is included into here itself, and it kind of resembles that HAP IL structure on the top and has that click. These feel okay. They're not branded by anything, but they feel pretty decent. And similarly, you also have a light up button. So if you like the light up look for lighting up LEDs, you can also use one of these and different colors of these light up buttons, which kind of have that same range of clicking on your micro switches here. Or if you like other LED buttons, here's another chrome LED that you can see here, or an actual Eclipse button where the outside part lights up and this is black, and it uses these really heavy micro switches here. So let's talk about micro switches and the differences in actually clicking these buttons. So when you're using these buttons that have different micro switches in the bottom, you also have a ton of different choices for different types of micro switches. So I want to go over them quickly. When you buy some of the Chinese non-brand ones, you have this SQ brand one and this Xenon brand here, or Xenex brand. And when you press them down, they're super clicky and really tough to press down. So I really don't recommend these for fighting games. They're okay if you're just generically pressing these buttons, but they're super heavy and super loud. I really prefer these Zippy or Cherry micro switches, which are 75 grams. So here's a Zippy brand and a Cherry brand micro switch, which you'll see often as one of the main switches you'll see for the high quality games. And so these micro switches are much quieter, much more responsive, and so I definitely recommend these Zippy or Cherry micro switches over those generic brand ones if you're looking for actual micro switches. Now let's go over joystick options that you have. On the right is the stock Arcade1Up joystick, which is a Sandwall clone, and on the left is a genuine Sandwall joystick that's installed here. So just to show you a little bit of what they look like, this is the actual stock joystick that you can see here. And so it's decently put together. It actually has Arcade1Up branding on here that I didn't see before. And it is a Sandwall clone. It looks very similar in terms of the gate and the springs that they use and the style. But the actual springs themselves from the actual switches are really tight when you press it around. Now let's compare that to a genuine Sandwall joystick that you can see here, and the switches feel a little bit more responsive and clicky, not as heavy sounding as these ones here. The actual connections are slightly different as well. This has individual wires coming out from each of the micro switches that connect into the board, and this has a 5-pin connector that you can actually get an adapter to plug directly into the same stock Arcade1Up encoder, and so both will work. And so this is the easiest swap addition that you can do, is replacing this Sandwall joystick into your Arcade1Up for a slightly better control experience than the stock one. But if you remember playing in the arcade, you probably remember playing on these giant HAP competition or Industrious Lorenzo IL joysticks. So these bad boys are super hefty and they feel excellent here. On the right hand side, you see an Industrious Lorenzo IL competition stick, and this is a HAP competition stick. So they look almost identical from the top side. There's slightly different build qualities in the plastic that's used. And you can see that this base is a little bit bigger on the IL than the HAP competition, but the switches themselves are actually Cherry micro switches that I showed you earlier. So they both perform pretty well, pretty similar. The problem is that these don't fit into the area well because this plastic part butts up against the button. So you have to do a little bit of modification if you want to use the HAP or IL competition sticks. So in order to get it to fit on my other control panel, I actually had to just Dremel out 2 different little holes here, because when I installed this upside down, I had to make a little bit of space for the buttons to fit into this area here. So as long as you're able to just comfortably cut off an edge here and still just drill in 3 corners, you can install one of these Industrious Lorenzo HAP sticks into your control panel, but you do have to do a little bit of modification in order to get it to fit. But you know, it just depends on your style, if you prefer this joystick or using the Sandwall clones, if you will. Also for the Sandwalls, you have the option of adding in these different style gates. This is an octagonal gate, which helps you kind of place your joystick in those corners if you want to do a crouching forward. Or you can also increase the spring tension here by getting heavier springs to make this feel a little bit more solid than the loose stock controller. So those are some options that you have. You could also get a circular gate. By default, there's a square gate here. So these are just various options that are all up to preference. So what do I like? What's my big preference? So I like the Sandwall buttons the best when I'm playing games. I've tried the HAP competition ones. I have them actually installed a full set on my Marvel vs. Capcom, and while I did have original Sandwalls here and I switched out to test them out, I don't like it for this game. I need my Sandwalls back. I'm going to install them back in here pretty soon. But for the Big Blue, you know, actually Sandwalls or the HAPs might work well for you because you're not button mashing, you're doing a lot of precise movements. But I just love pressing the Sandwall buttons because they're very responsive for fighting games. So for fighting game genre, I really prefer Sandwall buttons because I feel they're most responsive, they feel really great, and if you need to play them on Marvel vs. Capcom, it's easier to kind of like button mash when you're doing a super. The HAP competition ones actually being raised are a little bit harder to press. So those are my preferences when I'm playing games. Sandwall all the way for me with a Sandwall stick. I'm getting used to the bat top. I actually prefer the ball tap, but I have it on here just for it to match. Back to you, Mrs. Kongzarus.
Big Blue features 12 fantastic Capcom titles, including Street Fighter II Championship Edition, Street Fighter II Hyper Fighting, Super Street Fighter II Turbo, Super Puzzle Fighters 2 Turbo, Darkstalkers, Night Warriors, Darkstalkers Revenge, Darkstalkers 3, Saturday Night Slam Masters, Night of the Round, Echo Fighters, Capcom Sports Club, and Muscle Bomber Duo. Street Fighter II Championship Edition is the slowest and most basic of all the Street Fighter games, but is somehow still the most popular game on the cab. Street Fighter II Hyper Fighters and Super Street Fighter II Turbo are much faster games with better game balance, so we hope to see more people play those games. Puzzle Fighter is a very addicting puzzle block game where you build the same colored blocks into larger gems. Then use a matching glowing ball to break the squares and send additional blocks to your opponent. All 3 Darkstalker games are featured on the cab, and I always play that hottie Morrigan when I get a chance. She really knows how to shoot her cannon off to keep her opponents at bay. Saturday Night Slam Masters and Muscle Bomber Duel are the wrestling games on the cab which feature similar characters but slightly different control layouts. Once you finish beating up on your opponent's life meter using various moves, you can pin them to win the match. Knights of the Round is a classic beat-em up featuring King Arthur, Lancelot, and Percy as you battle various stages and level up. As you gain more points throughout the game, your characters actually level up and gain additional armor and larger weapons. Eco, not Echo, Fighters is a horizontal shooter that has a unique arm-like weapon that can rotate 360 degrees to fire while you still fly your craft. You can upgrade to various weapon types, upgrade their powers, and even charge to shoot a unique projectile for each type of weapon. Lastly, Capcom Sports Club is my sleeper hit of this cabinet, and it features 3 individual games of tennis, soccer, and basketball. In tennis, you can select characters from various countries, and I love how they added me into the game as Lily from China. Soccer is a 5-on-5 game, and basketball is 3-on-3, and you control your team with passing and shooting buttons to score goals or baskets.
Thanks, Mrs. Kongzarus. That was truly an awesome game list that's all online enabled, and let's talk a little bit about the online play with this cab. So I've had Big Blue for over a month now just to make sure that I've tested out the online lobbies to see what it's like. The only issue is that when I log on first off, I do have to do that little retry thing, but when I get into an online game, joining in Champion Edition, I'm hoping there's some people here. But we actually have 2 people here. So one of the first things that I really like the option is to watch people play. So you have 2 people that are watching. You have a green player versus a brand new player here. And right now the score is 0-0. So it's really fun being able to spectate. I really like that feature of the cab. When you want to exit, you press the live button and you can start up a room. If you want to start up your own room, just open up a lobby, hit yes. If you wanted to play with somebody specific, you can enter a code, but you don't need to. Once I'm in the lobby, you can just wait for anybody else to join. You can play your own game completely just like you would in an arcade. If somebody wants to pop in, they can at any time. So maybe somebody will join me, but let's go ahead and play a little bit and while we wait. Oh, and somebody just joined me. We have Ruda Bog Bega Man who's going to join, and it automatically refreshes and we're going to get into a match. So he's picking Blanca. I'm going to pick my man E Honda. See what's going on. Let's just play a match and see what happens. Alright, so he is a green player, so let's talk a little bit about the leveling system. So the way that the matchups work in this system as well as Marvel vs. Capcom is that the colors actually represent a ranks tier. So the white tier is ranks 1 through 3, the green tier is rank 4 through 7, the blue tier is rank 8 through 11, purple goes from 12 to 15, and then you have gold from 16 to 19, and then red after that is 20. So I don't think we're gonna have any red players for a little while. We'll probably get some golds pretty soon, I think so. Oh wow, I just wasn't paying attention. So yeah, but we do have some really top tier players that are playing on the cab, and as more people come, you'll see different levels. But my recommendation is try to find somebody who's close to your rank level while you're playing. So even though I'm a higher ranked player, he could be just starting out his getting his cab. So you really kind of never know what everybody's level is at until you actually play them. And in terms of the actual how you gain rank, if you played somebody who is your actual ranking, you would gain about 100 points on your ranking system experience points for every win that you have. If you lose, you would lose 100 points. And then it's a tiered system, so once you actually start playing somebody who's a higher or lower level than you, the ranking ranges change. So he's a lower level than me, and so if I won, I would win less than 100 points, but if I lost, I would lose more than 100 points. It's a really weird system. So a lower tier player could take off actual tons of experience points from a higher tier player. So there's actually not a lot of incentive for a higher tier player to kind of like troll and pick on lowercase players, because it actually ruins their score more. So I will gain a little bit more experience because I won the match, and then if he wants to play, you can keep hitting start and keep playing. So you want to try to play people that are close to your level. If not in the same color bracket, I recommend at least maybe a level or two up or down, and then that way you can feel pretty decent about whether or not you are gaining the appropriate amount of experience points while you're playing, and you don't have to worry about losing experience points. But honestly, rank is just something to really, it's a side portion of the game. The quality of the games are really going to depend on how much you play your characters, and so I don't really pay too much attention to rank or records. Actually, with Championship Edition, I have I believe almost 300 losses and only a handful of wins, but I'm still a rank level blue. So you can see that even if I have a losing record, I still have a blue rank. So I think I'm rank 8 right now. So alright, so I won 2 matches now, so we'll see if he quits or if he wants to keep going. That's the only bad thing, is that you can only keep playing one person until they quit, and he's going to keep going. So we'll see. If I wanted to leave at any point in time, I could just hit the live button. It'll give me the option to leave, yes or no. So there is a thing called rage quitting. So if you are in the middle of a match and say, instead of bowing out gracefully, you can press this button and you can leave in the middle of the match. It says yes, loss will be counted. So you will get the loss, but your opponent will not get the win. So that's kind of one of those cheesy things where you leave the match in the middle of it and they don't get a win, but you still get a loss. So you still get a loss on your record, trying to deter people from doing that. The other thing that people do sometimes is just shut off their machine in the middle of a match when you're rage quitting, and then the machine doesn't log it as a loss, but that also the person that is in the match itself shows that they will get a loss because they're stuck in the game and can't exit. So that's a little bit of a weird thing that's happening, and I don't know if that's actual part of the matchup or the system, but I hope Arcade1Up fixes that eventually. Alright, so I just won the 5th match, and normally when you're playing a game, it's usually first to 5, first to 10 is traditionally what you do. You can keep going. Normally I would quit right now, but since he challenged me again one more time, I'll play one more match. But typically once you win 5, that's good enough to quit a match. But you can play as long as you want to, as long as you're comfortable playing. But a good courtesy is to do a minimum FT3, FT5, 1 or 2, however you want to. But I like to play FT5s when I can and leave and come back and restart the set. Alright, so I beat him 6-1. I'm gonna go ahead and quit now, just so I can left, or he actually quit and left the room. So when I want to leave, I'm just gonna hit the live button and leave as well, and you can see my rank went up a little bit. So he was a, so there's a level 8 here. Oh, I love it that the rooms are actually a little bit more open right now. It's great to see that the lobbies are a little bit more full. I was getting worried that the lobbies wouldn't be as full. But it looks like the Best Buy folks have gotten the CAD. That was Champion Edition. There's nobody in Hyper Fighting. Doesn't look like there's anybody in Street Fighter 2 Turbo. So Champion Edition seems to still be the hottest game around. For better or worse, these two games, Hyper Fighting and Street Fighter 2 Turbo, are definitely much faster games in my opinion. And so I like playing the other games when I can. It's definitely hard to find matches in any of these other games. So hopefully be able to get on here, but that will give you a taste of the online play. The other thing I wanted to mention is the Wi-Fi. So the Wi-Fi is 2.4 gigahertz, and so that's the Wi-Fi settings that you have when you are in the system, when you want to be able to find a Wi-Fi. There is an Ethernet connection port that you can plug in directly. John D was actually saying that having the Wi-Fi is better when you're playing with somebody else with Wi-Fi or Ethernet to Ethernet. I've been playing mostly with Wi-Fi and haven't had too many issues with lag. So I don't know if the gameplay is a little bit slower or if everybody else is on Wi-Fi, but I've been happy with the Wi-Fi connection. I think ultimately it's nice to have the the plug so you can plug in to have better quality internet, but looks like the Wi-Fi is good enough for these games. Also, if you press the player 2 button on each game, there's a settings menu that goes over different difficulty options, speed options. Unfortunately, there's no scanline options, but this is nice to see that there are various options you can do for each game, including setting the difficulty level and speed.
So final thoughts on that Big Blue Club. I think it's still one of the best Arcade1Ups that they put out to date, with the game selection alone being the most fantastic lineup that they've had, and all 12 of those games are online enabled. Makes this a huge value buy in my opinion. The online play is great once you can find matchups. The biggest complaint that most people will see at this point in time, 1 month into owning it, more people are getting it, is that the lobbies again are still a little bit empty. You can play your local games with a local person, but we're really looking for that online play experience. And right now the individual lobbies, it's hard to search for opponents. So if there's a recommendation out there, I know there's some talk about having a joint lobby system where you can have some matching up systems. You can see where everybody else is playing. Right now you have to go into individual games to see what lobby action is happening, and at any given point in time I would say the lobbies right now are a little bit emptier, but I'm happy at this point. It's almost 11 p.m. Pacific and there's 3 rooms that are open here, and this is fantastic. So this is great to see more and more people getting the cab, jumping into here. I think people are starting with Championship Edition because that's the one that you see on the marquee. It's the marquee game, but I'm hoping other people will get into here. There's other places you can actually find other popes to join games with. There's an online Facebook group for the Big Blue. There's a Discord channel called the Online Arcade, run by my guy Footy Laughs. So those are places you want to connect with other players as well to find matches. You can do that too. But otherwise, huge value for the what it is. I hope they come out with other versions of the Big Blue, maybe one without the stool and the deck protector light up so that more people can get it if it's under 500 bucks. More people should get this. It's super fantastic. Street Fighter 2 Online is exactly what we've been waiting for, and I can't wait for them to add in the snack talking feature because the headsets do have microphone capabilities with this connection. So that's it for this review. Hopefully you guys liked it. Thank you Mrs. Kongzers for joining us earlier, and we'll see you on the online boards. Game on. See you there. Bye. More. You're so cute. Too cute. You're cute. Super cute. Love it.